I'm 𝗪𝗶𝗹𝘀, and you're listening to What the Heck Fintech, where you'll experience and learn that Fintech is FinLife. Let's get started. Welcome, everybody. We got a great guest today. We have an unbelievable, great, fantastic friend of mine who we've done a lot of great fintech capstone projects and other work together, and collaborating on Mass Fintech Hub. A great friend of mine, Wilson Wong from WPI, and we've had different professors before, but this is our first computer science professor, and he is unbelievable. I've worked so closely with him on capstone projects, the students, the way he teaches them, the way he builds them up and gets them ready for real world projects. It's unbelievable. The training he gives beforehand and then the capstone, it's unbelievable. And his journey, how he got here, where do you hear this? And the way he approaches and thinks of things, you're all going to learn so much from Wilson. I guarantee it. So Wilson, welcome so much to What the Heck Fintech. Now, I won't do it justice. I'd love to hear your background, how you started, how did you even get into IT, and then, bring us up to right now what you're doing at WPI. And then I'll go deeper on a lot of the stuff you're saying, and I'll bring up a lot of a lot of the fun we had together, without naming sponsors, because we know we're not supposed to do that. But we'll go into some of the fun and learning that we've had doing fintech projects together. So Wilson, take it away.
Well, first, thank you for having me on this podcast, and thank you for such a great intro. So just to come off with a very simple introduction, my start really was when I went to MIT and I got my computer science and engineering bachelor's degree. That was quite the experience. And after a short stint with a company after that, I went off to Cornell to get my MBA. And that was really the start of my career in the industry. So I worked for various companies as their director of technical operations, their director of IT, and as a chief technologist at one company. But it was various companies across different industries, including even a law firm at one point.
Wow, really?
Yeah, that was quite the exciting experience. Dealing with lawyers is challenging. But then one day, a friend of mine contacted me and said that they had an emergency at Bentley College. One of their instructors had suddenly left with just weeks before the term began, and they were contacting me to see whether I would be interested in teaching. And I had considered doing teaching on some level, although, to be honest, I had really considered it more as like a night class for adult students or something like that, just for fun, not as a full-time profession. But I told him that I would do it for just 1 year, help them tide over until they got a replacement. And I wound up enjoying it way more than I expected. So as a result, I stayed teaching. I got my PhD in business with a concentration in information systems.
Wow.
And I became a professor, and I have been teaching at Worcester Polytechnic Institute for the last 10 years. And I have to say, of all of the jobs I've had in my entire career, industry and otherwise, WPI has been by far the most amount of fun I have had. And I know, Rob, you have seen some of the fun that we've actually managed to do, especially with our capstone projects.
Yeah, lots. We've done so much and so many cool things, and we've learned, and the students learn, and yeah, it's been amazing. Yeah,
It really has.
Now I'd like to go a little more into that. So you were at Bentley. So how long were you at Bentley for?
I was at Bentley for 14 years.
Wow, wow, nice, nice. Well,
Yeah.
and as you know, Bentley just joined Mass FinTech Hub, so
Yes.
they're all in the family too, and they have FinTech major, and I believe
Mhm.
soon or will be having a graduate FinTech major soon. Either they have it now or it's really close. But yeah, they're growing in their FinTech too. So and
Yes.
yeah, and so we'll be collaborating with Bentley a lot too. So you'll be back on that campus again for having some fun.
Well, I do look forward to that because I have been in contact with my old department. I was in the computer information systems department, and they
Yeah.
have talked about their fintech major and how they're interested in participating even more than they currently are. So I look forward to that collaboration.
Yeah, that's going to be great. Now, the thing that I love when we're working together, right? Because I'm an industry guy, and then I kind of did the professor thing. I always say, in my air quotes, I was a professor, right? But
Oh, you did a great job.
I just brought the real world to them, right? But the thing I loved and the way you got the students ready and ready for our projects, we were putting them into, big companies, startups and big companies, big financial institutions, big hardware, big software, big data, all that. And they were ready. And the things like you do your class differently than I've seen out in a great way. I mean that I've seen in other universities from a computer science standpoint. What's some of your secret sauce that you have that you like to share with us? That and how do students react to it too? Because I see that they're ready for the capstone projects, but you get them ready for that.
Well, it all began when I joined WPI. Among the courses that I teach are software engineering.
Yep.
And at the very, very beginning, when I joined WPI, I had thought about this software engineering class, and I teach two sections of it in the spring with about 75 students each.
Wow.
And while I was thinking about how I could get the best out of this class, it suddenly occurred to me that 150 software engineering students make for a really decent sized software firm. And having come from the industry, I had immediately thought, what could I do to really take the class, give the students an industry perspective, but also give them an industry type of environment. And I immediately thought of the incubator model that startup firms have. So my idea was to take this software engineering class, split the class up into teams of 10, so large enough sized teams, because let's face it, working in a 3 or 4 person team, that's easy.
Mm.
There's not as much learning that you need to have to do that. I put them on 10-person teams because that really requires a great deal more coordination, and I thought it would build their team skills much more quickly.
Yep.
But I also decided to apply what's in the industry, so I introduced the Agile methodology to the class as closely as possible. It's not identical to the industry because I have a lot of students and the students don't have an equal amount of experience. So there are a couple limitations, but I try to do it as closely as possible to what they would encounter in the industry. And with the Agile approach and with the multiple teams, I have the teams present on a weekly basis to one another. So each week, the teams get to see what the other teams have done. And just like competing startup companies, every single team then goes ahead and takes all of the best ideas that the other teams have created and they incorporate it into their own application. And we have about 5 iterations, basically 5 agile sprints where the students do this. And it really is amazing the amount of learning, the dedication that the students have, and the outcome that they wind up creating in the class. It really surpassed everything I had expected the first time I had tried this. And I have continued to take this approach, and I've, of course, enhanced it over the years, but that's the basic approach that I do in my software engineering class. And I talk to a lot of people in the industry who I know from my days at MIT and since then. I constantly ask them, what are you guys doing in the industry? You know, what are the new things I need to consider in my classes? And then I try to bring that in as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I love that approach because obviously I was in IT and industry. We did nothing but agile. Actually, we did waterfall for years, and then I want to say
Yeah.
probably 1999, around there. That's when we started going agile, and then really getting better and better and better at that at
Mhm.
Fidelity Investments. And they're still improving their processes. It's agile, right? So. And so
Yeah.
I think every company does it a little different, right? Every company.
Mhm.
So because it's what's needed for that team, what's needed for that organization. Some are heavily regulatory, some of them aren't. Depends on the app. So that's great learning all by itself. And and I notice when we have, students come into industry projects that and from the computer science side, they do such a great job because of everything you just told us, right? You got them ready. They had to do sprints. Now, typically, and you know this, and we all know this, but this is a constraint because of academia. The projects we do 1 week sprints, right? But usually it's 2 week
Right.
sprints out in industry, But that could, so I bet you some places do 1 week, and some people already do 3 weeks, right? It depends.
Actually, the 1 week sprints, part of the reason for the 1 week sprints are the fact that WPI has half semesters. So everything goes twice as fast.
Right.
But the other reason why I really like teaching the students 1 week sprints is I've discovered they get used to the 1 week sprints. And as a result, after they finish and they go into the industry, their natural cycle of working is actually faster than what's expected in the industry.
Right.
So they try to cram the entire 2 weeks into a one week type of work schedule. And I just find that approach, teaching wise, from the perspective of actually applying it in the industry, I agree. 2 weeks is probably the most ideal amount of time. But from a learning perspective, the 1 week really sort of gets them moving at, of course, the term agile. They're much more agile as a result.
Right. Right. No, you're so true, right? And that 1 week from a learning perspective is critical, right? Because then it can rinse and repeat that much faster and document. And that's why I loved, because obviously in our capstone project, we wrote the paper, right? And you oversaw that. And it was self-documenting because they're writing about their agile sprints they're doing every week, right? Obviously, they had to write about other things too, but it just shows their progress and it helps their learning. And then your retrospective, what are you going to do better? What are you going to drop? What are you going to, do differently? And add on. That's what happens every day in real world industry. And I've noticed, all the industry folks and startups really appreciate that because that's how they work. So what you're doing is unbelievable for these students. And I've talked to a lot of different universities, since I've left and retired and left WPI. Well, actually, I haven't really left WPI. I'm still an entrepreneur in residence. So I'm still there. But
we'll never let you go.
yeah, never let me go because I love it, right? It's that approach which is so big, I think, for the learning for the students. And when I talk to other computer science departments, they don't. Some of them teach agile, most of them don't. and in other schools. And that's why I think it's so great and critical. And I know industry partners have gone out of their way and say that that's great, because that's what they're going to do when they after they walk down the aisle and have their diploma in their hand, right? So that's so they might as well start it now and getting. And how many times when we had and I tried to run it, as you saw, like I was running a project management office, right? Let's meet, let's talk to the project managers, let's talk to the whole team. Let's, it's just, it's fundamentals that you would do anyway, but that's what happens in industry. And how many times have you heard me say, like, the students go, like, yeah, we're blocked because of, we can't get access to this data for whatever reason. Like, yeah, get used to it. He says, how many times did you hear me say that? Get used to it. Yeah, you got to get more creative. That's why we're here. We're here to advise you. Get you. And then 𝗪𝗶𝗹, which was also on this podcast, the three of us would give them suggestions, but we would not get in the way and let them talk with the sponsor. So they have this huge, great learning, because that's probably 90% of the learning is talking to executives, talking to other IT professionals, and you get them ready. And then we always we get the business school students, the data science students that don't have the training you've given them, and even other computer science that didn't have the training, and we help them with their agile methodology and everything like that, because that's what they're going to do when they get out. So I mean, what you're doing is really magic to get these students ready for life, and get them industry hardened before they even, they don't have to knock their head against the wall their first, year, because they've already learned so much with the iteration process and fail fast mentality. That's kind of built into WPI.
Exactly.
That's huge.
Just about every single team that winds up taking my class, at some point or another, they reach a major roadblock. And that really is where a tremendous amount of the learning takes place. They reach that roadblock. How do they figure out how to get around that roadblock? Whether it's a roadblock that's technical, or I'd say at least half the time, the roadblock actually has to do with their team dynamics. How do they go about learning and overcoming it? And I'm pleased to say that the students really step up. And I've had something on the order of 150 different software engineering teams over my career. Actually, I think it's more than 150 now. And only in one case in 10 years that I have a team that actually was not able to surmount their problems. And it's because they basically pushed their problems under the rug all the way until the last week. And I'm sorry, but just as in the industry, if you wait until the very last second, no, you can't recover from that. But I've tried my best to sort of help the teams uncover their problems as early as possible.
Right. And that's probably the best learning they had, that they failed on that project or whatever it was.
Yes.
Study or whatever. Because, there's no hiding in Agile. You have daily sprints. What have you done? What are you doing tomorrow? How are you progressing? You're going to get your story done. How many points are remaining, right? Whatever, how you're engaging that, right? And then if you see the carryover, well, then it's going to be noticeable by the whole team. So what's your blocker? Why aren't you getting it done? Okay, let's remove the blocker. It brings the right conversations up. That's why Agile is going in. Before, you never see Agile in government, but now they're starting to happen there too. It's not just in fast-paced industries like in Fintech or other fast-moving industries. It's in all industries. The waterfall, the world's moving too fast. We have to deliver. It goes into the whole DevOps, deliver all the time, deliver quickly, and you can roll it back quickly too if you see something wrong too. So small deliverables all the time. So, and that's what you're teaching.
Yes.
Now I got to, because you teach database too, because those are the two critical courses that we looked at as we brought students into our capstone. Same mentality, different mentality when you did database, or I'd like to hear that story.
Some overlap. The database course, though, is an introduction to databases. So that's more a hands-on introduction to programming class. But even in that class, as with all the classes I've taught at WPI, I really believe that having the industry perspective is incredibly beneficial. For one thing, a lot of the projects that are tailored specifically just for academics, they just remove a lot of the so-called real-world messiness. And it's not realistic. It's not what you encounter when you're actually out in the industry. So again, I like to have the students be able to experience that immediately. So even with the database courses, I bring in a real life project of some sort. Yeah. I've done a couple of projects with an art association. I've brought in government agencies, a hospital. They get to deal with real data. In one case, one of the government agencies that we worked with, a really fun project, they had about a gigabyte of text data that had to be imported into a database. And this was actually a valuable learning experience, not just for the students, but for myself. Because we discovered dealing with that much data really had real world constraints. We actually had to figure out a text editor that could read in, the entire gigabyte in order to be able to process it before we could write programs to convert the data. So just preparing the data for the class actually took some effort. And I've always had a little debate, for those of you who are very computer savvy, for those of you who have used either Emacs or VI or Vim, my co-author and I have always had this argument about which is better, Emacs or VI, and I was always an Emacs proponent. But this data was so gigantic that I discovered Emacs had a limitation on the size of files and Vim did not. So I had to give them the win.
Yeah, I mean, because when I was at Fidelity, it was all about huge, tremendous amounts of data, terabytes and terabytes. How do you get through it? How do you understand it? All the dimensionality, the hierarchies, everything. How do you get your arms around it? Right? And that challenge is, everyone thinks the data is all clean. It's not. It's dirty, and it gets dirty every day. And you got structured and unstructured data. That's what you were talking about, right? So how do you put that together to get realization, to then even be in a position to put it in an app or do AI or do machine learning on it or whatever, data cleaning. And if you remember, one of the projects, one of the sponsors, which was a WPI grad, had a great analogy, doing data science and data in general. It's like brewing beer. It's 90% cleaning and 10% actual brewing, which I thought that's the best analogy, and I use it all the time now because it's so true. People are like, oh yeah, where's your data? Oh yeah, let's connect. Like, it doesn't work. Like, yeah, it doesn't work. That's why we need you. That's why we hired you. We need you to figure this out. And how are we going to use this data? And that's great real world learning that happens every day.
It really was. They had to deal with the messy data. They had to figure out how to normalize the data, because we didn't get the data in a normalized format. And again, they had to deal with huge amounts of data. Yeah. So it was a really, really valuable lesson for those students.
Absolutely. Please come back to part 2 with Wilson Wong, as Wilson goes deeper into the importance of AI and computer science from a learning and teaching standpoint, and what the future CS student will look like in 5 years. Thank you for listening to What the Heck, Fintech. Make sure you tune into our next episode as we continue to interview fintech leaders and share real-world stories from across the fintech ecosystem, so you can fully understand that fintech is FinLife.